All right, guys, just finished up 3 back-to-back Elite Series events in a row, and you know, obviously, if you're watching this, you're probably following along on the events. All 3 super tough fishing. We went to Lake Guntersville, Santee Cooper, South Carolina, and then finished up just this past couple days ago at Lake Chickamauga in Tennessee. And you know, heading into these events, I was in like 35th or so in points. Top 40 make the classic, so it's near the bubble. And I was a little bit nervous coming down here for these tournaments because we all knew the fishing was going to be pretty tough. Historically, I haven't done awesome in these super tough events, so you know, I had some pressure to catch some fish, and it worked out pretty well. I ended up with a 28th at Guntersville, a 9th at Santee Cooper, and 21st at Chickamauga. And with one event to go at Lake Fork in a couple weeks, I'm in 13th in points. So looking pretty good to make the classic. It's a big goal of mine, and it's a big accomplishment. I mean, it's a tough field of anglers that I'm fishing against, and you know, I feel pretty fortunate that these last few events went pretty good. So you know, go over some of the tackle that I use. I've never really, you know, usually from one tournament to the next, it's like a complete overhaul of equipment in the boat, just because we go to so many different places. But for the most part, I barely really changed out any rods or any tackle from in the boat. I mean, carry a lot of stuff with me, but for the most part, 3 different baits, you know, did most of the damage for me at these events. So number one thing probably that I caught a lot of fish on over the last few weeks, not at Santee, but at Guntersville and at Chickamauga, a 3/4 ounce Z-Man swing blade spinner bait, and I'm putting a little minnows swim bait on the back of it, just to, that boot tail helps keep it up in the water. I wanted a bigger spinner bait just for the bigger blades, and I'm fishing fairly shallow with it, but just something that I could, you know, slow roll but keep it down in the water column a little bit. I wanted it just sort of out of sight where I couldn't quite see it. And at both Guntersville and Chickamauga, I was fishing in the upper part, river part of the lakes, and you can see the grass edge along here. You know, just kind of going down these edges with a spinner bait, and there's a lot of bait around, and that just, you know, really mimics the smaller forage that a lot of the fish are chasing and eating, and it's a great way to cover water. So, you know, at Guntersville probably weighed, you know, over half my fish on that, and same thing at Chick this week. So that was a good deal. At Guntersville, I also caught a few on a soft jerk bait, a fluke style bait. There's more eelgrass there, and sometimes the fish would get up on top of that, and you know, that jerk shad would just stay up on top of it a little bit better. But moving along to Santee, I obviously had a great tournament there, but like super tough fishing. I think the 3 practice days I caught 2 keepers, 1 keeper, and 2 keepers on the 3rd day. Had a few other bites. So going into the event, I wasn't super confident, but I decided to choose an area, a creek that had a lot of, where I had the most bites, and it had a lot of stuff to flip and pitch at, and that was, you know, what I wanted to do. Just basically go somewhere where I could hunker down and just spend my time fishing, not messing around a whole lot. So this bait, I caught 1 good one. The 2nd day there, I had a pretty big bag. I caught 1 good one on a chatterbait, on a half-ounce jackhammer. All the rest of my fish I caught punching, just using a 1.25 ounce. That's a flat-out tungsten weight, and you know, if you do a lot of this, you know what I mean. But you want to use a quality tungsten if you're doing a lot of punching around. Just because if you use the cheaper stuff, the weights can cut your line and be hard on your line. So that was, you know, that was important. And then bait wise, that's just a Z-Man palmetto bug. That's their flipping bait, and you know, beautiful colors. They have quite a few different options, but that's the one that I use the most. And then just a big extra heavy Gamakatsu flipping straight shank hook. 2 bobber stops with that big weight. It just helps keep it in place. And you know, 65-pound Power Pro, super slick, and that was the deal. using a GLX flip and stick, and that's the 953. So it's a 711, it's a 3-power, so it's a little bit of a softer rod, and I just found, you know, shallow water, a lot of the bites were pretty close. I just wanted, you know, most of the time I would use a 4-power for flipping with the big weight and heavy cover, but I just felt like I was doing a little bit better with the softer rod, and that worked out good. Reel, that's an old Metanium, and you know, on my spinnerbait rod, I'm using the same rod for the chatterbait as well. That's a NRX 893, a 7.5, and I've got the new Metanium on there. That's a 7-to-1. Just a phenomenal casting reel, pleasure to use. But the old Metanium, that just goes to show, I mean, I've had this reel for 5-6 years at least. This is a 2-model old reel, and you know, it's still like it was new. So, you know, you get these higher end reels, they're gonna last you a long time, and they're worth the extra money when you get them. Finally, Guntersville and at Chick, caught quite a few on a frog, and I've been using a couple of different frogs. This one is a Jackal Sierra frog, and it's kind of small profile, it's fairly heavy, been a good one, and I'm throwing that on the IMX Pro. They have actually it's a 7.4, but it's a rod that's designed for frog fishing, so it's a little bit shorter but fairly heavy, but I'm able to cast it, you know, under some of these trees, cast it really accurately, and got a Shimano Bantam reel on there, 65-pound Power Pro Super Slick as well, and you know, just sort of bulletproof line. The other frog I'm using is the Z-Man has a new one, and it's really nice. It's very soft. They're a little bit lighter, which if I'm fishing around pads, more open water, that's what you want. It sits up good in the water. It's not gonna get caught on any grass or anything. But one thing I was doing here, and I would just mix it up. The two different frogs, they have a little bit different action. It seemed like I used white just because there's so much shad around, you know, where we're fishing, that I just felt like that was the most natural way to go. But if you're fishing around some of these mats, and I wouldn't do this around pads and more open water, but if you're around these mats that are pretty heavy, what we're doing is these are just some little tungsten nail weights, and I'm actually gonna put these in the frog. So I've already got one in there. I've been putting a couple of them in there. Those are little 16th ouncers, and they make a little bit of noise, but they add some weight to the frog. And if in the open water, this thing will actually sink slowly. But on top of those mats, it just allows it to push them down a little bit more, make a little bit more disturbance, and help those fish find it a little bit easier. So that was that's sort of the deal with that. And you know, obviously, this is my frog box. I carry a whole pile of different ones with me. You know, from little poppin' frogs. I like red a lot of the time, but here it was mostly a white deal, just because, like I say, there's a lot of shad around, and I felt like that was the way to go. But that's sort of been the baits that have done most of the damage for me over the last few weeks. I feel really fortunate to be in the position I am. Pressure's kind of off heading to Lake Fork, and I can go there, and you know, had a really good tournament there last year. It's full of big fish. I'm excited to finish the season strong and get home after that one. So if you have any questions, just fire away, and I'll be happy to help you out.